welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening up a stack of time-stamped excerpts from a deeply surreal, just fascinating text called OSA 27.
Yeah, it really is a wild one.
It's by Topi Hull 2. And, our mission today is to figure out exactly how a gritty, hyper-realistic war story suddenly mutates into a cosmic nightmare. I mean, we're talking parachuting werewolves here. And then somehow it transforms again into this profound vision of spiritual salvation.
It is an incredibly ambitious piece of writing. The author essentially builds this fully functional, highly detailed military thriller just so he can systematically dismantle it in front of you.
Yeah, completely Carrot Top.
Exactly. He uses this extreme, dreamlike escalation to explore physical warfare versus spiritual salvation, and ultimately the complete dissolution of the concept of enemies.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the opening sequence alone just sets a relentless pace. We are thrown immediately into the boots of a protagonist who calls himself the Number 7 prisoner. And he is on the run from Russian forces, sprinting through a wet spruce forest in the pitch black of early morning. You can practically feel the pine needles scratching his face.
Oh, absolutely. It's very visceral.
Right. And above him, there's this helicopter with a loudspeaker and a machine gun just tearing up the ground. Being completely cornered, he literally dives into a freezing waterfall.
Yeah, he just launches himself.
He is swept down the rapids while bullets whip through the water all around him.
And that's entirely on purpose. The author is grounding you completely in the physical mechanics of survival.
Yeah, the sensory details.
Right. You have the freezing temperature of the water, the lack of oxygen, the kinetic impact of the bullets. It establishes this baseline reality where violence is brutal, predictable, and, bound by the laws of physics.
But then the laws of action movies kind of take over.
Yeah, they really do.
He washes up near an alpine village, and a local guerrilla commander named Mike, who also goes by Toivo, by the way, casually steps out onto a cabin roof and fires a heat-seeking bazooka.
Just right off the roof.
Right. And he just blows the pursuing helicopter out of the sky. It feels like a massive adrenaline spike, like watching a vintage action film, Rambo or James Bond or something.
It totally has that 80s action vibe.
Yeah, so the protagonist is pulled from the water, vomiting, seeing stars. He's taken into this cozy, wood-carved mountain motel where we meet Shadow, who is this 2-meter-tall warrior calmly smoking a pipe in the lobby.
What's fascinating here is the deliberate, jarring contrast the author creates.
It's super jarring.
Yeah, between that hyper-violent exterior world and the quiet, insulated interior of the motel, the protagonist takes off his soaking wet jacket by a crackling fireplace, takes a shot of liquor, and pulls out a tiny Bible.
Right. And the crucial detail there is that he keeps this Bible protected inside a plastic pocket.
Yes.
I love that specific detail. It feels so strangely grounded. With all the bazookas and helicopter crashes happening outside, he is focused on keeping this little book dry.
It's his priority.
Yeah. He sits by the fire and prays a very specific line. He prays that every weapon formed against him will be ineffective.
And that plastic pocket, it serves as a brilliant mechanical metaphor for the entire text.
Oh, how so?
Well, it represents his attempt to waterproof his faith against a corrosive, violent world. And that prayer, asking for weapons to be rendered ineffective, is actually the structural blueprint for the rest of the story.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, the author is foreshadowing that the physical weapons we just saw, like the bullets and the heat-seeking missiles, they're going to become entirely useless. The real battle is internal and spiritual, and it is about to just bleed into the physical world.
Well, the illusion of that fireside safety shatters almost instantly. The protagonist goes up to a cozy wood-patterned motel room, which even has a watercolor painting of a waterfall.
A creepy little nod to what he just survived.
Exactly. A nice little touch there.
Yeah.
He falls asleep. And the text draws a direct causal link between his subconscious dread and the waking nightmare outside.
Right.
He dreams of soot-black faces babbling in a dark language, and he hears a knock-knock. And then he wakes up to an actual knock on his motel room door.
The sanctuary is breached right then and there.
Yeah.
Shadow is at the door, handing him a clock pistol, which is likely a stylized translation of a Glock, by the way. And the scale of the violence expands exponentially.
It really does. When they look over the balcony, the village is completely surrounded. We aren't just dealing with a lone helicopter anymore.
No, not at all.
There are hundreds of tanks, cannons firing directly into the village, and kamikaze paratroopers rushing the buildings. The building next door takes a direct missile strike, blowing a fireball into the sky and sending burning cinders into the protagonist's face.
It's just total chaos.
Total chaos. He runs down the lobby, firing his pistol blindly into the smoke. But instead of a heroic shootout, he just hears a dull flop sound behind him, everything goes black, and he loses consciousness.
Yeah, the action hero moment is just denied.
Completely flatlined. When he wakes up, the genre of a high-octane thriller has vanished. He is tied up in the village square alongside Mike and Shadow, laid out directly in front of a tank's tracks.
The author strips away any remaining illusion of agency or heroics. They are reduced to completely helpless prisoners awaiting execution.
Right.
And this is where the text introduces Tanja, the Russian female commander. She operates as the ultimate embodiment of the material world. She is cynical, heavily armed, and entirely focused on physical dominance.
And brutally cruel.
Oh, absolutely.
She interrogates the protagonist in broken English, kicks sand into his face, and when he mutters something under his breath and almost says something unchristian, she violently kicks him in the face again.
She holds all the cards.
She does. But then, the entire fabric of the story's reality just rips open. At around 5:13 a.m. in the text, the sky suddenly turns pitch black.
This is where it gets crazy.
It's insane. The clouds contorted to screaming faces, lightning starts striking everywhere, and an electric car drives right into the middle of the village square.
And this is not a piece of military hardware. It is a profoundly grotesque intrusion.
Yeah, the car's sheet metal is covered in spikes, and the body of the vehicle is draped in skinned human bodies.
It's horrifying.
There's a dying man clinging to the hood, screaming out a warning like, "The blacks are coming," before the entire car just spontaneously detonates. It showers Tanja and the tied-up prisoners in blood.
It's a complete shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're watching a tense, realistic military thriller, and someone suddenly flips the table, sets the board on fire, and changes the game to cosmic horror.
Right? Yeah.
The rules of engagement haven't just shifted, they've been annihilated.
That annihilation of the rules is the exact point, I think. The conventional war between the human factions, Tanja's soldiers, and the guerrillas is instantly rendered meaningless by the arrival of something incomprehensible.
Meaningless, yeah.
We need to look closely at Tanja's reaction here. She is covered in blood, staring at the spiked car, screaming, "What cursed thing is this?" For all her tanks, her authority, and her cruelty, she is suddenly proven to be just as vulnerable and bewildered as the men tied up at her feet.
Which honestly made me question what we were actually reading for a second.
How so?
Well, the protagonist took a hit to the head or got shot in the lobby before he blacked out. I found myself wondering, is this massive supernatural shift a literal event in the story's universe? Or is it a hallucinatory fever dream of a dying man projecting his own religious apocalyptic fears onto a military execution?
Ah, I see. But I would actually challenge the fever dream theory specifically because of how the author treats Tanja's perspective.
Okay, lay it on me.
If this were purely the protagonist's dying hallucination, Tanja's internal terror wouldn't carry any narrative weight. The text frames the horror as completely objective. Tanja is experiencing it just as viscerally as he is.
That's a great point.
The author needs this supernatural threat to be real within the fiction to force the ultimate psychological break in these characters. It serves to violently strip away their ideological armor.
That makes total sense because she tries so desperately to put that armor back on.
She really does.
Even after the bloody explosion, she tries to assert her military protocol. She orders her soldiers to drag the guerrillas onto a stage and tie them to 4 execution poles. It is such a desperate flex of human authority in a situation that has obviously slipped beyond human control.
And the environment itself aggressively rejects her authority. Thunder crashes, freezing rain pours down, and the text describes the eerie, howling sound of bone horns beginning to play from the darkness.
Bone horns. I mean, picture being one of those soldiers. You're holding a rifle, standing next to a tank, and suddenly the sky is screaming and bone horns are echoing through the rain.
It's terrifying.
The protagonist, who is tied to the pole, starts screeching in Russian over the noise. He yells to the soldiers, "Our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of darkness in the spaces of heaven."
He's quoting scripture right there.
Yeah, telling them to pray for their enemies. Tanja tries to silence him by stepping up and slashing his cheek with a knife. But then, a spine-chilling laugh booms through the thunder.
This is the moment the physical weapons the protagonist prayed about earlier are officially rendered useless. Parachute creatures begin falling from the dark clouds.
And they aren't using firearms, they are shooting poison arrows. One arrow hits a gorilla tied next to the protagonist, And the text vividly describes his eyeballs exploding into pieces.
It is incredibly graphic.
As the sky just pours with these creatures, they unleash some kind of pulse or EMP weapon from above. In an instant, every single one of Tanja's tanks is disabled.
Mechanically, the author is systematically disarming the human conflict. The technological superiority that Tanja relied upon to exert dominance is neutralized in a second.
Right, the tanks are just heavy metal boxes now.
Exactly.
The ultimate equalizer drops from the sky right after that. A massive, drooling, black-eyed werewolf parachutes down into the square and physically tears a group of soldiers to pieces.
A parachuting werewolf.
I know, it is absolute pandemonium. Mike, the guerrilla commander, screams at Tanja to untie them so they can fight the creatures together. And the commander who just slashed his friend's face actually complies.
She has no choice.
Right. She cuts them loose, hands them assault rifles, and they all sprint for Tanja's Humvee, which she claims is EMP-proof.
Ooh.
I have to ask you, think about the psychological whiplash required for that to happen.
Oh, it's immense. To go from standing in front of a firing squad to riding shotgun with your executioner.
Yeah.
This raises an important question about how existential threats rewrite human psychology. When faced with an incomprehensible cosmic horror, something that operates entirely outside the boundaries of human geopolitics, the rigid categories of us and them dissolve instantly.
They just vanish.
Right. Tanja dismisses the protagonist's explanation of these creatures as fairy tales. She's desperately trying to cling to her rational worldview, yet her foot is glued to the gas pedal, fleeing a mythological monster that just dismembered her troops.
She is driving up the steep, winding mountain roads, trying to outrun the carnage. It is the ultimate expression of the enemy of my enemy concept, but pushed to a surreal extreme. The physical war was really just a localized skirmish, like a preamble meant to soften these characters up for a much larger cosmic battle where human divisions mean absolutely nothing.
And the text pushes them up the mountain to force a final confrontation, not just with the monsters, but with their own capacity for grace.
That's beautifully put.
They reach the mountain plateau, completely isolated. Tanja rushes out of the Humvee, relying one last time on human technology. She's hoping the rescue signal she sent from the car's computer will bring military backup.
But the sky opens up again, and it is not a rescue chopper. A barrage of napalm and fire arrows rains down directly toward them.
Yeah.
A cluster of these flaming arrows comes whizzing straight for Tanja. Now let's pause and remember who Tanja is in this narrative.
The enemy commander.
She is the enemy commander. She's the one who mocked them, kicked them, slashed a knife across a man's face, and ordered their execution. But in that split second, Shadow, the giant, quiet guerrilla warrior, throws his 2-meter-tall body directly in front of the fire arrows meant for her.
He absorbs a horrific, lethal blow to save the woman who, literally an hour ago, was actively trying to crush him under a tank.
Shadow catches on fire and plummets backward into the dark ravine.
Yeah.
It is a completely staggering moment of sacrifice. Tanja, who the text goes out of its way to describe as a hard-surface soldier, completely breaks down. She bursts into tears.
We have to unpack the mechanics of why she breaks down in that moment.
Yeah, let's do that.
Her entire worldview, which is built on power, cruelty, and the strict rules of warfare, is completely dismantled by an act of incomprehensible grace.
Right?
She can understand a tank. She can understand a bullet. She cannot compute an enemy sacrificing his life to save hers. It shatters the ideological armor she has been wearing the entire story.
The protagonist watches this happen, and as the mountain burns around them, he has a profound realization.
Yeah.
He remembers the biblical verse, "There is no greater love than to give one's life for a friend."
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the ravine where Shadow fell, he amends it in his own mind. He realizes Shadow just gave his life for an enemy. With the fire closing in, the protagonist, Mike, and the weeping commander Tanja all fall to their knees together in the flames, and they pray.
The physical world is literally consumed at this point. The protagonist describes feeling his flesh being pierced and burned away by the heat.
It's so intense.
It is. The author uses this fire to signify the final, complete dissolution of the material realm, the very realm Tanja was so obsessed with controlling at the beginning.
And then the final ultimate genre shift occurs. The burning mountain fades. They wake up surrounded by intense, pure brightness.
The contrast is amazing.
They are no longer dodging bullets or fleeing werewolves. The protagonist opens his eyes, and standing right in front of him is Shadow, the man who just fell burning into a ravine.
Wow.
But Shadow is whole, and he is dressed in pure white. Standing next to him are Tanja and Mike. As the protagonist realizes where he is, a wide smile spreads across his face and he begins to weep. The text states that Jesus himself steps forward and wipes the tears away from their eyes.
It is a radical, breathtaking transition. The narrative travels from the most grounded, brutal violence imaginable to a scene of absolute divine peace.
The author leaves us with an incredibly striking, surreal final image. All the people, organized by their tribes, gather together to form the shape of a massive beating heart directly in front of God's shining throne.
It's beautiful.
So what does this all mean? We started with a guy spitting up river water while a bazooka blew up a helicopter, and we ended inside a literal manifestation of divine love shaped like a giant heart.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Topi Haltu's text is demonstrating the ultimate futility of physical conflict.
Right.
Go back to that motel room. The protagonist prayed that every weapon formed against him would be ineffective, and the author honors that prayer.
He really does.
The bazookas, the EMP blasts, the tanks, the poison arrows, none of them actually solved the core problem of the narrative. The only thing that defeated the powers of darkness was a radical, self-sacrificing love that entirely erased the line between ally and enemy.
Throwing a punch or firing a gun didn't save anyone. Shadow taking those fire arrows for Tanja was the real victory. That was the mechanism that actually broke the cycle of violence.
Exactly. The supernatural horror was essentially a violent catalyst. It was introduced to prove to these characters that their human war was petty, destructive, and deeply distracting.
Just noise, really.
Yeah, just noise. The only path to salvation wasn't through superior firepower. It was through recognizing their shared humanity, realized only when someone was willing to sacrifice themselves for their oppressor.
It is a masterpiece of thematic escalation. The ground we just covered in this story is wild. From dodging bullets in a freezing rapid, to reading a Bible in a plastic pocket, to forming an unholy alliance with your executioner to fight off parachuting werewolves, to finally standing in a heart-shaped heavenly choir.
It's quite the journey.
It demands that you constantly reevaluate what is actually important.
Every time you think you understand the rules of the narrative, the stakes are violently elevated, eventually reaching a cosmic, spiritual climax that recontextualizes everything that came before it.
It leaves a serious mark. And it brings up a thought I want you to mull over long after we sign off today.
Oh, let's hear it.
In Topi Haltu's story, it took the sky turning black, electric cars draped in bodies, and literal monsters dropping from the clouds to force two bitter enemies to realize they were just human beings standing in the exact same trench.
Right.
The ideological armor only cracked when reality itself fell apart. So think about our own deepest, most bitter conflicts, whether they are quiet personal grievances or massive societal divides. If we were suddenly interrupted by an undeniable existential threat, how quickly would all those heavily fortified boundaries just evaporate?
Pretty fast, I'd imagine.
How fast would we realize our so-called enemies are just fellow humans trying to survive the dark? The real question is, what will it take for us to make that leap, to offer that kind of radical grace to one another without needing a werewolf to drop from the sky?
A difficult but essential question to ask ourselves.
Thank you for going on this incredible deep dive with us today. Keep questioning the boundaries of the stories you read, look for the mechanics beneath the surface, and always keep exploring. Until next time.